Are we ready? Okay, good morning. We are back again, and today we're really lucky. We have Lana Kulas with us.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. I think Lana has a really fascinating story, which we'll get a little bit more into, but what we're talking about today and what Lana's passion is service learning. Lana has 13 years in education.
And count it.
Originally from Bosnia and left Bosnia to head to London when you were 9.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't speak a word of English when you left Bosnia, and then you got into schooling, etc. in the UK and ended up going to Oxford, which is wonderful, I'm sure. But aside from that, when we were talking about you attending Oxford, and I know this is getting away from the topic, you actually got into teaching because of the impact the teachers had on you.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And was this your teachers at Oxford, or was it your teachers going through school?
It was school. It was absolutely school. I think there's a huge difference between school and university. I think at university it's all about your subjects and it's about, learning your subject as much as you can. Whereas school, it was about discovering who you are, what you like, and taking all those opportunities. And I was extremely lucky to have amazing people teaching me.
Now, as we move into service learning, did your experience then coming from Bosnia, which you left due to the war? Mm-hmm. So you came to London not having any English with your family due to a situation a lot of people don't experience. Is this what shaped your philosophy about service learning? And can you tell us a bit more about your philosophy in service learning?
So when I went to school, I just went to a very standard state school in the west of London, which was huge. It had 2,000 kids, and it was just secondary. But what the school was really passionate about was giving kids loads of opportunities to experience different things. So whether that's going to the theatre, I watched England play football pretty much every year because we had a teacher who was really passionate about taking us to these big world games.
Yeah.
And what I realized was that when I came to apply to university, I had loads of things I could talk about. So I could talk about developing leadership skills, communication skills, teamwork skills, because of the opportunities I had when I was at school. Mm-hmm. And I know now when we're talking about what programs we have in schools, we always come back to, well, what do you remember from school? You don't remember your lessons. You'll remember your favorite teacher. Yeah. You'll remember your least favorite teacher. But you'll remember those trips, those opportunities, those experiences you had. And they are what I think makes the difference from school to school and from student to student.
Okay. So when we talk about service learning, and a lot of people do look at service learning as, are you taking our students on a glorified holiday? Are they going to go in and spend their time sort of painting an orphanage? It's something you hear about a lot, or reading books in English, or they'll take their photo op and then they'll come back. What fascinates me about you is you really want them to make real world connections. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be fun, which you've said, like going to football games. And especially in this day and age of automation, we're looking for more soft skills. But how do you then make service learning something you can sell to parents and to students for their value?
So I'll give you an example. My probably most successful project was actually taking kids to Bosnia. Come from Bosnia. I know everything that's gone on there. Yep. My mother's quite a formidable woman. I'm sure she'll find us a project for 18 months' time. So I spoke to my mum and I said, what do you think? She said, let me have a look. And she got really involved with the children's home and an orphanage and said, look, I think we could really do something here. So the aim of that project was that the kids couldn't just go do a project, come back, and that be that. So we divided into 3 parts. The first part being they had to research what is it that particular project needs, what is it the kids need, what do we need to know before we go. So they looked a little bit at the history. Okay. They then also had to apply to come on the trip, and that trip still runs now. We get about 100 kids that want to go, and we take 20. So we're really careful about who gets to go and making sure that it's a privilege to get to go as well. So it's not a holiday. Yeah. And they have to raise the money. So they are not allowed to just be given the money, and they have to account for, which also means that it doesn't matter what your personal background is, because you've got to raise the money. Yep. So you can't just have someone give it to you. You either have to have a part-time job, because they can do that in the UK. They organize events, they do car boot sales, they wash teachers' cars, all these things to raise the money. And then we go, and everything we do there has to be planned by our students. So so they might do a mini sports day.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay.
So the only time we work with an operator is when we need a coach company, when we need the whitewater rafting company.
Yes.
Everything else is done by the kids and by the teachers. So that means that pretty much all the money raised goes directly to helping the kids and the projects that run there. And then the third part of the trip is when they come back, they have to be the ambassadors for the trip to persuade the next bunch of students to go.
Yeah.
And then we added an extra element to it as the years went on by inviting other schools. So then we've got kids from very different parts of London working together before they go, while they're there and when they come back. And
so you're using actually automation in your favor.
Yeah.
They can Zoom, they can Skype, they can, that's great. And that's a really good way to sort of circumvent 21st century skills with the soft skills that the kids need to develop.
And then what we've also had, because that project's been running for 12, 13 years now, what we've got is, for example, in May, we have some of the young adults really. I mean, some of them are in their 20s, but they have learning difficulties and they live in a halfway house that we set up. We have some of them coming to London to spend 2 weeks sightseeing, and the kids that 10 years ago went on that trip, who are now young adults in careers and in professions, are helping us run that trip. We have a teacher who has since moved back to her home in Ireland. She hosts the kids every summer. So the kids come from Bosnia to Ireland and spend, I think, a week there. We have one of our former students who was on the first ever trip. She now works with the UWC, the United World College that's in Bosnia, and runs her own summer youth program where she invites people from all over Bosnia to come and spend 2 weeks doing debates, doing workshops, doing arts, doing crafts. So there's all these little things that have come as a result of it. So it's been a springboard for the kids that we've taken to set up their own project.
Well, not just the kids you've taken, but the kids that they affected in Bosnia are now. So this is a lesson to everybody that you can start things. You can start these companies that make a massive difference in the world. And this is how it starts. And this is why I wanted to talk to you. This is such a good example of something being passion driven and personal to you, and then your mom, and then the school, and then the kids. You can do it. You did it.
Yeah.
And here we sit 12 years later, and you're impacting the lives of the students who went, the kids in Bosnia, the teachers who are now, as you said, young adults and still doing different things. And this all started from the fruit of your passion and your experiences, your life experiences, which is what service learning should be about, right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure everyone was very clear how these things, this is how change happens. This is how change happens, Lana, people like you who just do it. You know what? I do have an idea and my mom will work with me or my whoever it is. So go on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's become much bigger than we ever thought it would be. So I wanted it to be a school trip. I wanted it to be my baby. And the guy, Davor Golub, who worked with me is half Canadian, half Croatian. And him and I, it was our trip. And then my mother went, well, this could be even bigger. So she has since... we were the founding members of Our Kids Foundation, which is now a charity that's registered in the UK. So the project has got much bigger than just a children's home.
Oh, okay.
We've also built a halfway house that houses some of the young adults that have to leave the home at 18, who might have learning difficulties and might have disabilities that mean they can't live independently. But their only other alternative would be a full institution, which is very restrictive because there's no halfway house.
I get it.
Essentially. So what we did was, and a lot of this was driven by the students, because one of the things that tends to happen on these trips is there's a little bit of funding left over at the end, and we'll say to the kids, okay, you've been here 10 days, you've seen everything that's going on.
Right.
Where would you like that final pot of money to go? We can donate it. We're not just going to give the money, but you need to tell us what you want it spent on. And the majority of this halfway house we built was funded by that money, by the students.
Very good.
So they would say, well, actually, can we fund the windows in the halfway house? Can we fund the painting of the halfway house? So we now have that house as well. And we have the Our Kids Foundation in the UK.
Okay. There's
also a registered charity in Bosnia. And there's a registered charity in Sweden, because we ended up involving some friends from Sweden. So it's become a much bigger project than the initial school trip, which is what it was. And
so can you tell me about how, when you decided, I can do this and I'm from Bosnia, how did you come up with the idea that the students would backload, do the plan? I think that's a great idea, by the way, that they plan their own trips. You're teaching them time management, you're teaching them leadership skills, you're teaching them budgeting. There's a lot of value to that. So they would plan their trip, they would go to the trip, and then they would come back and they would have to. So how does that look? If another school was thinking, that's a great idea, and I'm from this part of the world, or whatever they decide to do, how does that look in time or laying it out for them?
For us, it happened very quickly. Okay. So my initial idea was, I'm sure we can find something, but I think for this year, we just need to say to the kids, we're really sorry because this other trip had fallen through.
It organically
but as I said, my mother's a formidable character, and she went, no, it will be fine, we will go this year.
Okay.
And it started off, we were very, very lucky because we come from Bosnia, and we still go on holidays there.
Yes.
We had a lot of local knowledge, and it's about finding what are the experiences that the kids will really enjoy, and then what are the companies you can trust to work. And obviously, coming from the UK, we've got very high standards in terms of safety, risk, and all of this, and that's not always the case where you go. So we have to be really careful. I did a visit, there was a preliminary visit to meet with some people locally and say, our biggest risk activity is whitewater rafting. So we went, we want to bring the kids, but these are the non-negotiables: the safety, the cost, the length of it, who is going, the qualifications of the people who are taking us.
So let me ask you then, if you're going to drive something, because I don't want to talk about the traditional service learning, which I think you and I had already decided we weren't. There's a lot of schools that do. We will go to Thailand. Thailand's a destination. France is a destination. Everybody knows where these places are and that you can get people to take you. So do you think service learning should be driven by somebody at the school who is personally motivated the way you were from your experiences, so that you can then go back to either where you're from or somewhere that's had an impact on you and drive it because you're so passionate? And do you think that kind of service learning has more of an impact? Because I have never seen service learning grow the way you managed to make your charity grow. And can you remind me of the name again?
Our Kids Foundation.
Our Kids Foundation charity. So if other schools were looking to, capitalize or maybe send their kids or get in touch with you, can they look that up?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, I think, 3 schools in London and possibly in June, 1 school in Qatar.
Oh, see? Excellent. But do you think that every school should be looking for a champion who's personally passionate about either where they grew up or how they grew up or a spouse? Do you think that's the way moving forward that service learning becomes? I don't want to say meaningful, because service learning is always meaningful, but meaningful to the point that it has with you, that it's organically driven into something that's really impacted hundreds of lives now in a real meaningful. People are changed. Not only are they changed, they're changed in a way that is staying with them. They went 10 years ago and are now welcoming these kids into their homes or their businesses as professionals.
I think we found the children's home on an online forum for locals, where we posted a message saying, we're thinking of bringing some kids to Bosnia, and where is there a need? And it was a local guy who says, there's a children's home, and I go and train my kids' football team there because they have a sports hall, and that's one of the ways they raise funds. Yeah. He said, and the kids there are great, but they could really do with some help. And that's where it came from. Okay. But I think it needs to either be a person or even a student that has a cause that really means something for the community.
I never thought about that. So have you experienced that, where a student has come to you and said, Miss Lana, this is where I'm from, and I would really like to get involved in...
Yeah. Okay. So at my current school, I'm currently at the Swiss school in Doha. We have one student who's currently grade 11, who is very passionate about raising money for Syrian refugees and also for some of the causes in Palestine. Yep. And she has driven so many projects in our school. So she was grade 10 last year. Yep. And for her grade 10 personal project, her project was to raise awareness of issues in Palestine and to raise money. And it was a cause very, very close to her heart. And part of the project wasn't just I want to raise money, but it was actually I want to make people aware of what are some of the issues.
Okay.
So part of her service learning was actually going to some of our primary classes and going to some of the secondary classes and delivering workshops to educate the students what is my cause about, and what are some of the issues and what is it that we can do to help, and then doing some of the more traditional things to raise the funds to send them. And the way in which she did that actually meant that she was recently invited to a conference in Turkey to talk about her experiences, and I think that's something she's going to get to do as well. And that was completely student driven. That was one person who then took a whole load of other students with her.
Yeah.
And she is sustaining it. So now she's doing the IB diploma. Obviously, they have the large CAS component, and that has become the thing that's driving it. And she came to see me with a couple of friends, and we have our systems in school where if you want to organize an event, we need to talk about the budget, we need to talk about the timing, so all those skills are being developed. But she has something she is very, very passionate about.
And do you feel with the service learning that when we talk about them in curriculum, etc., and I had a daughter that went through the IB, and do you think that we are imparting in them proper service learning, or do you think we're ticking a box for their service learning?
I currently have a group of grade 8 girls who are really passionate about Alzheimer's, because I think they've had members in their family who've been affected by Alzheimer's and dementia. And our head of primary's mother happened to be in school, and she has dementia and Alzheimer's. And the girls actually went, well, we want to really make our project personal and really make the students that are coming to our bake sale to raise money understand what we're doing this for. So one part of their service project was to interview this lady and then play that interview in an assembly to all of the secondary school and say, this is a charity we're raising money for. Lots of us have heard of Alzheimer's, lots of us have heard about dementia, but here's a person that's actually going through this, talking about their experience. And this lady has come back to our school 2 or 3 times now, and she sees the girls and they talk about it, and they have that connection. And the girls have come and said, we don't want to change our project, we want to keep going with the same cause and with the same thing.
Oh, see, that's service learning. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and we had talked about this at first, is you taught in some of the poorest areas in London. How do we bring service learning to those students? Because there's a misconception when we talk about service learning. And when I was researching for speaking with you, people seem to think that service learning is for rich kids. It's for the students who are in international schools, and that's who it's geared towards, and that's where businesses put their money, and that's where, and I would disagree with that in your case. And I think it's a really important message. So can you tell us how you feel about service learning in the poorer communities where they can't afford a trip, or they're not living somewhere where they could offer a car wash or cookies or chocolate. They can't raise the money that way.
I think it's even more important in those areas. So when I think about the first school I ever worked in, where I did my NQT year, as it's known in the UK, it was one of the poorest areas of London. It's in West London. And it was a high level of deprivation, high level of behaviour difficulties, high level of special needs within the school. And one of the things that we wanted to try and do was get the kids into the community. And it was something, because this level of deprivation goes through generations, and quite often, yes, you have the children who are struggling, but then you also have the elderly who have gone through those generations, and are then either very lonely or don't have any activities or anything to do,
and they've seen a lot of suffering.
And for us, it was something as simple as it's coming up to Christmas, or it's coming up to another festival, and the school will just host a simple lunch and invite people from the old folks home to come in, and the kids help serve them the lunch, and the kids will sit and talk with them, and the kids will read to them. And that gives a totally different perspective to the kids of how they can help other people. So they might have challenges in their lives and they might feel helpless, but then you see them having this really positive impact on a totally different generation, and on adults who maybe in the past have let them down, and who maybe they don't feel any trust in. They are now in a real position to impact those people's lives.
And you really hit it on the head when you said that they feel help. And you can, when you're from a community where the entire community is in the same boat that you are, it's very difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It takes education and the teachers who are working in those schools to make a difference. And we often don't look at how important service is. We become entrenched in, we need to get them educated so there can be jobs. And that's what our job is with these children, is to get them an education so they can improve their position. It becomes very you. So I think your message about them having the ability to not feel helpless, and the ability to connect within their own community, which is very similar to what you did when you left Boston. It never left you, even though you moved to the UK, and here you are going back and doing these things.
When I look at service learning now with our students, and we at the Swiss school, it's very much a new thing for us, and it's something that we're developing, and we're going slowly because we don't want 1,000,001 bake sales,
which is
it
fine.
loses its meaning.
Absolutely.
And it can be, your service can be to your school community.
It's really important that we have educational leaders like you who have the background and patience to not judge an idea, right? And to sit back and have the students comfortable coming to you and saying, I'd like to do this, what do you think? And having the ability to communicate with them, maybe not 1,000,000 bake sales, or maybe not this, why don't we look at it like this? I think that's really important to stress. I mean, I know you don't want this to be about who you are, but I think it's an important component, Lana, because I feel strongly that the people who drive service learning need to realize the impact they're having. And you really are a great example of that. And just the way that you interact with the students, when they know they can come to you and no idea is too small or too big, and that there's value in whatever they say, whether they get to do it or not, that's what leads to real learning and real compassion, real empathy. And that's, I guess, part of what we're trying to talk about today. But another thing, we talk about Qatar, and as we're finishing up, as we talk about Qatar, and we talk about a country that has a lot of money and the students come from a lot of money, what do you think is the best form of service learning here?
I think it's looking at what is in your school community and what is the need in your school community. Okay. So one thing we've looked at is looking at how we engage our parents, for example.
Okay.
So yesterday we had some of our celebrations for National Sports Day, and we took 200 of our students went out of school, and 20 students stayed in school. And the students who stayed in school, some of their activities were led by our parents. And we had, we have a mother who's a Pilates instructor. She was running a Pilates activity for the kids.
That's still service.
Yeah. And all of the things that we ran, so our grade 6 and 7 students went to a gym on the Pearl, Jamito gym. Yeah. They did not charge us a penny to look after 95 of our kids and teach them what does a healthy lifestyle look like. Wow. What are some of the activities you can do for a healthy lifestyle?
Because they're passionate about it.
Future Sports, another company that worked with CNAQ.
Yes.
They took 60 of our students and gave them a football clinic.
Wow.
And so that's also, it's about setting the example.
Absolutely. That is a great way to put it. Yeah. Setting the example.
So it's setting the example. Yes, we're a great company in Qatar, and yes, we're a business and we make money, but we also give back to our community because those 90 kids we took to the gym have parents, have siblings who are of gym going age, so they might think, well, I'll go check out that gym. Yeah. And I might join. So giving that example to our students is a really great way. Yes. It's also looking at other ways. So we had recently two of our parents are film directors. Okay. And they directed and shot a film called Mare Nostrum a few years ago. Yep. That was a 15-minute film, no dialogue, but it was about essentially a Syrian father and his daughter escaping on some of the boats on the Mediterranean. Right. And it's a very powerful 15-minute film. And our students in grade 11 were studying theory of knowledge and looking at the arts as an example. And we were looking at what is art? Do you need to know what the artist intended? How do we define a piece of art? How do we create meaning through art? And we showed them the film. And then the next day, one of the parents that had directed the film came in for a Q&A session. Oh, wow. And obviously, we've got an issue close to a lot of our students because a lot of our students have connections in Syria. Absolutely. And then we have the two film directors are actually originally from Syria, but they're also foreign passport holders, which is why they were able to leave. Yeah. So we have a parent, her daughter was in the film. which our kids know.
Yeah.
And she's talking about, well, this was my opportunity to raise issues that are happening in my country.
Yeah.
And now I'm here talking to you guys about it and getting your perceptions. And that was, we talked about linking things to the real world.
Yes.
Well, we all go and see films. We all watch films, and we don't think twice necessarily what inspired that.
Yeah.
But the kids are there going to the director. Why did you make that?
The director coming in is service. The young woman you talked about who just wants to make them aware of, I guess what we're is trying to make the meaning of service to be broader. It doesn't necessarily have to be about going, taking that money and leaving. And I appreciate the feedback and the questions, because it's true. Do we do enough within Qatar to raise? But that's a really good way to do it, actually.
It doesn't have to be these huge things where we're going out.
When it doesn't have to be about money.
No, it doesn't have to be about money at all.
It's important to show the examples like what you were talking about, that this is something you do for you because you want to do it and you know that it's better for life moving forward, that it's sustainable.
Yeah. We've currently got loads of roadworks going on outside our school. Some of our
Don't we all?
Some of our teachers have collected stuff for the guys who are working out there, and they will go, they will speak to them, they will talk to them, and they will, they will make donations to them and sort of say, what would make life a little bit easier, because we know you guys are doing a great job in fairly tough conditions at times.
Yes.
What can we do? Yeah. What can we do to help?
Which again is service.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, Lana, is there anything you would like to leave the audience with, or are there tips and tricks you think are particularly important to introducing more service or to make service more part of their lifestyle or their school lifestyle?
I think it's, one, leave it to the kids. Get them to tell you what they want. And two, all of this just comes back to opportunity. Yeah. So in your school, yes, you have your curriculum, but what are the opportunities the kids have? Because at the end of the day, when they come to make those job applications, those university applications, and when they're generally trying to be a good human being, that's what makes the difference, I think, the opportunities they've had.
I agree. Well, thank you very much. It was great to have you.
Thank you
and that's it. There you go.
All right, there we go.
That's it. You can breathe now.
I feel like I didn't for a